Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Welcome to Stress-Free IEP, the show where we help families build their village to raise their neurodivergent children with confidence and support. I'm your host, Frances Schefter, special education attorney, advocate, and fellow parent, walking with you on this journey. Each week, we shine a light on the professionals, resources, and real-world strategies that can empower you to navigate the IEP process and beyond without stress. Whether you're tuning in live on Facebook or YouTube or listening later on your favorite podcast app, we're so glad you're here. Let's dive in and meet today's amazing guest. Today's guest is Leila Farshchian, MA BCBA, and she is a seasoned expert with over 25 years in autism education and behavioral intervention. She holds a master's degree in applied behavior analysis from Columbia University and is a board-certified behavior analyst and certified special educator. Leila's early success in special education was recognized by the New Jersey State Board of Education, and since then, she has founded and scaled multiple impactful organizations, including Learner Compass and ABA Toolbox, a groundbreaking platform transforming therapeutic service delivery. Beyond education, she is also deeply engaged in the global initiatives through the Global School House Project and the International Health Awareness Network. Leila brings a powerful blend of academic rigor, innovation, and global perspective to the field of special education. Leila, thank you for being on our show and welcome.
Frances, thank you for that warm welcome. That was very kind. And I'm grateful to be here and grateful to speak on special education, IEPs, and just my experience overall. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I want to jump in on ABA because that is, I'm sure you've seen as well, there are two schools of thought on ABA therapy now, of some saying, oh, it's still fabulous, it's great, it's changed, and others saying, absolutely not, never do it. Okay. So what's your, I don't know, what are the tools, the strategies, simplifying the value-based care,
Sure. So I've been in the field for about 30 years now, and board-certified behavior analyst since 2003. And I have seen our field evolve tremendously, right? I also see the challenges of why there would be two schools of thought when it comes to ABA, right? Because it is a newer field compared to speech, OT, and physical therapy. So the standardization of it has been slow. And only in 2019 did we get registered behavior therapists to be able to administer direct care. That's just 5-6 years ago, right? Wow. And the BCBA field is actually quite new too. It's within 20 or so years. So, and now it's no longer international. So the field of ABA is extremely powerful, when it comes to when it's implemented correctly, because we have the advantage of hours on our side. And we have the advantage of anywhere between 25 to 40 hours a week for intensive care, where the neuroplasticity, right, the plasticity of the brain can really be, I would say, really addressed, right? Like we would sit there and identify gaps. But again, I have seen our field evolve tremendously. We went from more stricter, more intensive types of treatments to the model of more compassionate care, more value-based care. And that evolution has served our learners and our community very well. So I think for anyone who is really looking for that applied behavior analytic treatment and intervention, it does require a little bit more homework. It does require a little bit more insight as to what type of ABA are you going to be getting? Because the type of ABA that is highly effective, I want to just conclude with that question with something really impactful for me, was what came out of Columbia University, which is the science of teaching, which is called CABAS, Comprehensive Applications of Behavior Analysis to Schooling. We see treatment results 4 to 7 times enhanced, 4 to 7 times. And that's tremendous for learners. However, it's done well. And what we're committed to at ABA Toolbox is taking that science from a few hundred and disseminating it to millions. So again, that science of ABA, when it's done correctly, when it's done with care, when it's done with compassionate care, is very different than what we saw 25 years ago and 30 years ago. I mean, one last thing I want to say on that, when we think about what happened in classrooms 40 years ago when it came to
Oh yeah.
discipline, we've come a long way there too. So evolution, right? And just evolving as a field, evolving in terms of the language we use with compassionate care, mindfulness, all of those things, those serve our learners and our community well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like, I definitely understand two schools of thoughts, but like we say all the time, when you've met one autistic child, you've met one autistic child. It is such a spectrum now, and ABA isn't going to be for everybody. But as you said, it's evolved and it's now individualized the way an IEP is, So it's based on the child's needs and meeting the child where the child is. It's not, as you said, it used to be this, discrete trial methods I think they used. Is that what it was? But like the skill and drill type stuff. And it was ABA therapy, I know at some point, was teaching the child how to function in the world. Right.
And within the behavioral health model, even within the ABA model, again, the CABAs that I've referred to from Columbia University, they work with children who are gifted, right? They work with children who are needing just reading immersion, or we work with children who need math immersion in typical settings. And we work with children on the spectrum, right? And so that type of ABA, that school of thought, is really taking skills, breaking them down into small components that are digestible, meeting the individual where they are. Some children can take bigger steps. Some need smaller steps. It's highly individualized, right? So it doesn't have to be discrete trial. Discrete trial is for the child who needs very intensive small steps, and it's highly effective when done well. But individuals who need bigger steps, who need maybe, half-hour worksheet, versus 50 different discrete trial instructions in that half hour, it's a completely different world, and it's a sophisticated science. But unfortunately, it's fallen into unsophisticated hands over and over again.
Right.
Right.
And that's that we see that often, is that there are people that are great at their jobs and people that are not as great at their jobs. And it's hard to, I always say also that not everybody is a good fit. Yes, I'm an education attorney. I'm not going to be the right fit. Some people aren't going to like my personality, and that's okay, but don't write off the entire community of education attorneys or BCBAs just because you've had one bad experience.
Absolutely.
Find the right one, work it the right way. So like ABA in the schools have you seen, like, are schools allowing ABA? Are they doing ABA in the schools?
They are. In New Jersey, my third program, I started about four programs in schools before I started Learners Compass, my private practice. 3 were in New Jersey. The third one top 3 in the state for ABA. We did have a one-to-one model. It was very intensive. It was also highly individualized. And then the fourth one was in a public school, private school. But the one that I want to talk about, which inspired ABA Toolbox, which is a platform that I started in 2019, also in 2019, and now it's in the market. What was incredible about it is that the OT, PT, speech, and the ABA worked hand in hand. And I think right now what happens is parents are the collaborators of care. The burden falls on them, and it's highly disjointed and challenging for them. And these individuals who are well-intentioned, these clinicians, ABA, speech, OT, PT, they're collaborating in an IEP room, an IEP meeting once a year, right? And the parents have to really just collaborate and bring everybody together and kind of communicate, well, if she's doing this, are you doing that? That's what our platform is aiming to do, is to bring that collaboration to session by session rather than once a year disjointed. Because the challenge is these individuals with disabilities are pulled in 5 different directions. And then behaviors occur. They're frustrated. I'm getting 5 different messages from my care providers. One of them wants me to say something this way. The other one wants me to write that way. The other one wants me to walk that way. And it's extremely taxing. And everybody is well-intentioned. And I think that's when you asked about in schools, yes, in the East Coast and also in the West Coast, and I think Some parts of Chicago is having has like one BCBA to like 8 different schools. It's very challenging, but there are parts of the country where now ABA is in the classrooms, and the one that worked really well for us, it was that collaborative model between the care providers and the ABA. We saw great results. We worked with
Right.
one another with data, like, are you going to do a sensory type diet? We call it functional exercise. Let's take data. What's working? Do we see a decrease? So it can be highly impactful when we hold hands and do that value-based care together to pull the learner in the center.
Right. Yeah, and I say that often with the IEP meetings, making sure that the school and the outside providers are collaborating, because I mean, I've seen it with my own child. It's like at school they're learning this, but then their person is telling them to do it that way, and like which is right. Both could be right, but let's get on the same page so as not to confuse the learner, because they're having a challenging enough time. Let's not add to their challenges, right?
We want to bring intentionality into it,
Yeah.
right? Intentionality of when to overlap and when not to overlap. When to pull back and say, look, this is the PT's turf. This is the ABA's turf. You know what? This is everybody's turf, because it's a matter of requesting and eye contact and social skills. So we should all get on the same page. And it's not enough to do an IEP meeting once a year. So within that IEP meeting, we highly suggest that a collaboration is implemented on a regular basis, with sharing of materials, sharing of goals, and sharing of data on a week-to-week basis for a really impactful program.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, I've been in IEP meetings and it's frustrated me because clients have brought their outside providers, which I'm of course fine with, but then all of a sudden their outside providers is arguing for something. And I'm like, what are you arguing for? Why? Like, and I had no idea was coming. Not saying it was wrong, but as the education attorney, I should know what you're arguing so I can help argue it. And is this something that the client wanted, or are you just pulling this out on your own? And like, that would have been helpful had I known beforehand of like, hey, this is what I think needs to be on the IEP. Let's talk it through. Is this a school thing or is this a medical thing? Because as you know, that's the other challenge we always have is it a medical need or an educational need?
And I'm glad you brought that up, because what happens to the physician who's trying to monitor different prescriptions and maybe even experimental stem cell, or, we can't just say, oh, he's talking more, or he's right, more tuned in. That's not enough, right? That's not enough to make clinical decisions. And that, again, is something that we're striving for at ABA Toolbox, is to have that AB environment. And by AB, I mean, just a clinical, I add one variable at a time and I can see the results type of environment, so that we can help make good decisions together and put the learner at the center. Because physicians really are on the outskirts of it, but everyone really has to kind of join in and do this together, right, to be effective.
So how does Toolbox work?
So it's a platform for providers, and they can log in and provide the intake for the families. The families can log in and do the intake as well. And then it has a treatment component with a curriculum that's over 25 years old or so. It's been really revised over and over again. And my ambition is to have it translated for the international community, which we're starting to serve. So they have the curriculum, they have the data collection, and they have the treatment planning and plan of care reporting. And then it also allows the administrators to have a bird's eye view, so they can see clinical performances, trends. They can match the goals to age and grade, as well as relevant domains. For the social, communication, and behavior, it is for it's for autism and developmental disabilities. And our aim is to have it be for multidisciplinary. That's what we're working towards, to be launched at the end of the year. So it will be a circle of care with real-time collaboration between providers in session by session. But it does allow you to do insurance billing, private billing. And so it takes the clinician from an A to Z experience in a unified ecosystem. So you don't have to use 5+ fragmented systems. Plus, it offers resources for educators and clinicians as well. Schools use it, clinics and agencies use it, and early intervention uses it as well.
Got it. Okay, so that's more something of providers would engage in, and
It's
then bring the clients in.
providers and clinicians and educators. That's right.
Got it. Okay, interesting. Okay, because I've heard other ways around that the parents bring in and yeah, but I like
Well,
that the clinician. Yeah,
it does have a parent portal. So the parents
right.
can be right in there with them, collaborating and seeing what's happening in real time. So they are no longer, trying to make 50 calls, get everybody on a Zoom meeting and bring disjointed reports over. And it's got to be extremely challenging, right? To
Yeah,
be in that position day in, day out for years. So we want to support that. And again, the time saving factors are always huge as well, because we know there's 6 to 18 month wait lists for treatment.
yep.
And we know there's 375% rise in autism since the year 2000.
Wow.
So the solution allows us to be able to treat more individuals with not only the science that it allows within it. Like I mentioned, we want to infuse that CABA-based science within the system to make it available to millions instead of a few hundred. And then it's a time-saving type of thing.
Right. That makes sense. And I know you talked about your other company, Learner's Compass. And what's that company? Like, what's the purpose? What's that about?
It's a great group of people. I'm so grateful to be working with them. We're about 70 clinicians in the northern New Jersey area, and we provide ABA therapy within our community. And it's served as the research and development bed for ABA Toolbox. And our clinicians will say, that's not user friendly, or that's too many clicks, or can you include that in there? We need this resource. And they've been instrumental in just being part of the development of it all.
That's awesome. And so it's just in northern New Jersey, because ABA pretty much has to be in person, right?
My private practice is in northern New Jersey, yes. And I do think it's highly effective for ABA to be in person. That's been my experience as a clinician. I do know some who are doing more telehealth. And hey, if we can reach more remote areas and those learners can sit behind a computer for a bit of time and get instruction, or those families can get support, I'm all for that as well. However, we are on site. We're in schools and in homes.
Mm-hmm. Which that makes sense, because there are some kids that will do well or can do well in line. I agree. I'm a in-person type person, but before COVID, I was like, I would never do a meeting, an IEP meeting on the phone, or and now I'm like, let's do it on video. We're good.
I think families benefit quite a bit from some of the online support. We do have some of our parent supports as part of our treatment packages. Every family gets that parent support time with us weekly. And we do some of that on Zoom just because it's convenient for them after work hours, weekend hours and such.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're not, if for an hour meeting, we don't have to factor in an hour and a half of travel time, right?
Exactly.
And there's only 24 hours in the day. So what else, what pointers do you have, for families that are on the fence? I don't know, is ABA right for me and my child? What's their best avenue? What should they do? Who should they talk to?
I think it's a really important factor to ask good questions, to ask a lot of questions. And as parents, I'm a parent. I have 2 children. One is 15, one is 12. And I remember a piano teacher came over for my daughter once, and I asked her to leave after several. And I shocked myself. I said, the session's over. You have to leave. Right.
Wow.
And the way that my daughter was scared of playing music, the way that she was reprimanded, the way that she felt, I saw it in her eyes. I was not okay with it. Now, as clinicians, we go in and we do sometimes ask children to come out of their comfort zone. That's what it's about. And that might create some resistance and challenges for the child in the beginning. So it's a fine line. As a parent, I would say really your intuition, right? Ask a lot of questions. Look at resumes. Families who come to our clinic ask us for resumes. And our bottom line is 3+ years experience in ABA before we bring you on. You are not coming out of the street and then being put in front of a child with disabilities and then now you're an RBT. That's not happening in our clinic. And I think that's a marker of importance there. So I think asking a lot of questions, making sure that the individuals that are assigned to the learners have more than just one workshop, right? They have experience, and then the BCBAs are seasoned and they're collaborative, right? They're not just about only ABA or behavioral health. They're about the child, they're about the family, and they're about value-based care. I think those are important. Again, our field has been evolving, right? We're not as old as OT, PT, and speech. So, and not everybody was licensed 15 years ago when I was practicing. We called ourselves therapists, but we were not necessarily so. And so there's been some challenges. It's a highly effective treatment. There's a lot of good science behind it. Unfortunately, it takes some homework to find the right scientists to come and follow your intuition, ask a lot of questions, and you will find the right people. They're out there.
I would say good for you for telling the person to leave, because it clearly wasn't a good fit.
Yeah,
And I say that all the time to clients and to parents that I talk to, and, professionally and personal level, is like, trust your intuition.
right.
As parents, it's, if you walk into some place and it doesn't feel right, it's not right. It's okay to turn around and walk out. Just
And
because
it's
you walked in
okay.
doesn't mean you have to finish.
And it's okay to ask questions.
Yeah.
How many years have you been doing this? Where did you get your training from? What do you think about compassionate care and value-based care? What if I need you for things like, I've never been on vacation and I need to take my child to a hotel room? What if I need you for more than just, the basics of eye contact and requesting? What if I need to make my entire family life better? Can you help me with those things? Right? Can we get out of the comfort zone of our own space? And also, I walk into a lot of situations where families are just really kind of accepting some of the limitations that disability has put on them. And then there's these amazing programs out there that are pulling, the whole family together in a direction of independence, just a different meaningful life. But it takes time and it takes the right experts, So
Yeah. So what questions, I mean, you went through a lot of them, but I guess, what I'm thinking, like, as a parent, what I would want to know is, like, how can it sounds, sorry, it sounds like, for me, that as a parent, you kind of need to know what direction you want to go, like what your goals are. Like, how important is it for a parent to know what their goals are for the family when walking into meeting an ABA therapist versus the ABA therapist helping them develop those goals?
the first thing we do as part of our application process is give people a 7-page questionnaire.
Wow.
Okay. We want to know what is challenging in your day-to-day life. Is it difficult to get to school? Is it hard to get a haircut? Is it hard to give the child a shower? Is it difficult to sit in a room with others when there's a birthday party going on? All of those things matter, because sometimes, without being asked those questions, families kind of get accustomed to the limitations of the disability. It affects the whole family. Are the siblings interacting, right? So we ask a lot of questions, and that helps families kind of think and say, okay, well, I haven't thought about this. I've kind of gotten used to this. Yes, I do avoid the supermarket. I do avoid changing my direction to the supermarket. I have to take the same way every single time, right? So we ask questions. So, look for providers who really are interested in your day-to-day life as a family. And look for providers who ask you the questions so that you can start to think about all the possibilities of shaping life into a more healthier family unit.
Right. That makes sense. Like, you don't need to know. You just need to find somebody that will help you figure it out, because there's a lot of things. Like, I'm just thinking about it, like, as a parent myself, we do certain things. We're in the trenches.
Exactly.
We're totally in the trenches. We're living this day to day. We're doing what we can to get through. I always like to say, hey, my kids are still alive and nobody had to go to the hospital today. It's a good day. But what it is. So sometimes we don't even think about, like, really, could we do that? Could life happen with that? Is that something that, we just have to live with? Or is there something that we can do to help? I hate saying change the child to fit the environment, but make the child more comfortable in that environment, I think, is a
Right,
better
and
word.
pushing them out of their comfort zone, pushing the whole family beyond that. And one thing that I recommend in our area, in the northern New Jersey, New York area, there's several exemplary schools. Okay, they're more like clinics. So I have asked my teams in the public schools to go visit them. One is Princeton Child Development Institute. Another one is the McCartan Center in New York. Visiting them, seeing what becomes possible right? What are the expectations they set for their staff? What are the expectations that, what are those learners doing? And there's another one called Read Academy. They teach rollerblading and all kinds of food making. And just look at, maybe ask your community or call the state disability center and ask what some of those private schools, some of those have wait lists of 200 to 400 people on them. But it's worth going to their visiting day and seeing what excellent treatment looks like. What does good ABA behavioral health look like? What does good collaborative OT-PT speech type programs look like, right? And then bringing that into your home setting, asking your educators to model after that. I think that there are there's a lot of good science and a lot of good therapists and a lot of great, well-intentioned providers out there doing exemplary work. It's good to seek out what they're doing and learn from that.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. And then figure out the model that works for your family and create it in your home. Right.
Right. Because we're in silos. When this happens, it becomes so overwhelming.
Yeah.
Right. When the diagnosis comes, it's so overwhelming. So, and then people are in silos,
Yeah. Yeah. Where do I go? What do I do? How do I start? And with the diagnosis, I know for a lot, it's very, if it's not something that they've dealt with before because it's not in their family, or it's been hidden in their family because they don't want to talk about it, then it's lonely. It's a lonely place to be, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what other, we talked a lot about ABA, and bridging the gap. I'm trying to think of what else, because I know you are such a wealth of information with your background and everything. And it's like, I don't want to not hit on something. So what are the questions that I forgot to ask you, or the topics that we didn't hit on that you think is important for the listeners? If there's anything.
So I'm here, if anyone wants to contact me, Leila at ABA Toolbox .com, and reach out with any questions you may have. And I'm happy to support on that level. And we also have quite a bit on our social media on LinkedIn. If you ever have any questions, we do spotlights of the month where we highlight families, authors, even individuals in the community who are providing maybe like a different kind of like a hairdresser experience or job coaching experience. There's a lot going on in the community. But one thing that I do want to really highlight is we are in our silos. And how do we come out of that? Like the diagnosis happens. Reach out to the state, reach out to the organizations near you, find those exemplary schools and see if you can connect with one of the behavioral health specialists from them, or and always do the research in terms of who they're assigning to the child, right? And finding that intuitive response as well within yourself and trusting that. That's the compass. That inner compass is really key. So I think for us, when we put together programs, what's really important is the data speaks for itself, right? And whether you want to be in a position where you are doing that discrete trial intensive ABA type therapy, or a more naturalistic approach of ABA therapy, or a collaborative model, maybe it's just behavioral health along with everything else, ask for the data, ask to be part of that data is what I would recommend to families. You have access to it. A lot of times people don't even share that with the families. That's always very helpful, right? Because then there can be a carryover at home. There can be some kind of empowerment too, to be able to relate to the child in a way where they're now responding to the family in a more successful way, and bringing in the siblings to do the same.
Yeah. And then
I think the siblings is one of the things where it really, for me, it's key. How are those children feeling, right? Is there some kind of support group they can go to, as to just be able to navigate all the attention that's going to the child with disabilities? I know there's a lot of navigation, especially in the beginning, a lot of balancing acts, and they want to relate to their sibling, and they're having a hard time sometimes, right? So I think that's always an area to think about as well. Not to overwhelm, but I would say that there's a lot of supports out there. Utilizing them is important.
Yeah. And what I like to say is that you don't have to change everything at once.
Not at
What
all.
is your, like, what is the biggest pain point? Okay, my kids keep fighting and hitting each other. That's something that needs to be resolved. Let's find a solution for that. Once we resolve that, now let's look at what's the next pain point, right? And then bring it all together. Because again, we all know it's overwhelming. It's a challenge. And I know you mentioned a lot of your social media sites, and we will have all of those when this, like, we're live now, but when it officially gets published, we'll have all those links in the show notes. Are there any like final tips or advice that you want to give to our listeners?
Well, we brought up the IEPs and we brought up school, right? But it's the beginning of school now, and IEPs are usually later on in the year. My suggestion is reaching out to the special ed directors or the case managers or the individuals who are in charge of the child's program in a school and asking what type of collaboration will be happening and how can we foster more so that the child is at the center and people are not pulling them in different directions, but just working together in a cohesive way in a circle of care that serves the family and the child. So I would just maybe ask for the plan for collaboration between care providers. What will that look like? How can I be part of it? And how do we keep it consistent throughout the year for sharing of materials, sharing of goals, and just informing the parent? Because one thing I have found over the years is as we're providing families with information, whether it's once a month clinic, meaning a meeting together once a month, or every 3 weeks, if you could do it every 2 weeks. One thing that I found extremely valuable is there's just less questions and more action, more proactive action being taken,
Right.
and the anxiety levels go down and we just see
Yeah.
better progress. So I would say just ask for a collaborative plan at the beginning of the year
I
rather
love it.
than waiting on the IEP time at the end of the year.
Yeah, at the very beginning. I love that because I know the former teacher in me is like, wow, as a teacher that, I'd be like, a family wants to collaborate. Like, well, wait a minute, like that's great. I love that. Yeah. And before it starts getting too busy because, now, yes, it's busy at the beginning of the year, but it's going to start getting crazier and busier soon. So I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all of your wisdom with our listeners.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful speaking with you, and you know where to find me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Be
And
well.
thank you all for joining us on this episode of Stress Free IEP. We hope today's conversation gave you new tools, insights, or just a little more peace of mind as you support your neurodivergent child. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone in your village. You can always learn more and connect with me at schefterlaw.com or follow along on social media. Until next time, remember, you do not have to do it all alone.